Hello everyone and welcome to a new episode from Careers Talks. Today I have Shresh. Shresh did a degree in accounting and finance at the University of Bath. He then started his careers in sales at IBM. He worked there for 6 years and now you work for Certinia, which is a software as a service company. You work as a senior account executive.
That's right.
And you've been there for around a year and a month.
That's right.
First of all, how are you doing?
No, all good. Yeah, you got that right, by the way. So good job. Good job on the research. No, I'm really happy to be here, to be fair. Thanks for having me. And yeah, I know it's a long time in the making. So
yeah.
Exciting times.
I'm also very excited and been waiting a lot for this. It's the first time I touch on something like sales.
Got you.
Usually I talk about like software roles, mainly a bit on finance and consulting. So this is a new So this is a new field that I'm very interested in. I want to know what does it mean when you work in sales, your daily responsibilities. So we're going to talk mainly about sales and what you do at Certinia. If we can get started with a bit on your career journey, how you shifted from doing a degree in finance and accounting to choosing sales. If you can tell us a bit more about that, please.
No, definitely. And in fact, I'll tell you why I did accounting and finance before I tell you how I got into sales. So just quickly, all right. So I grew up in Dubai. That's home for me. And during school, I was really good at math, right? I enjoyed playing with numbers, as they call it.
I realized from our chat, you're like doing some quick calculations. I'm like, okay.
Exactly, yeah. Math. So I enjoy like playing with numbers.
Nice.
And I had an interest for the stock market, right?
Okay.
So looking at things like how did they go up, and also enjoyed like watching those movies, right? Think about like Wall Street, or at that time like Wall Street 2 came out, etc.
Yeah.
So anyways, enjoyed that. And one of the things my parents said was like, what does a career look like, right? Because coming from an Indian background, it's all about what are you going to do after university. So they felt like accountancy.
Similar case for our parents. Right?
Exactly. So you can relate, right? So there you go. And it was about what's a safe career, right? With the skills you have. And they were talking about accountancy as a potential. So they said, okay, let's look at what degrees are there for accountants, right? So accounting and finance was a very famous degree which people do. And what attracted them was it was a Bachelor of Sciences rather than of business administration or like, I don't know, the arts, they call it, right? So they liked that. And then it was talking about where would you do it? Okay. Right? So my sister, who's elder, 5 years elder, she went to the US. Okay. But they felt like that was too far, because obviously traveling from Dubai to US is really far. So they said, okay, let's pick something which is easy, direct flight. So they settled on UK, and then we started looking within the UK.
Are you the youngest?
I'm the youngest. Only two of us.
That makes sense. Okay.
There you go. But
so I thought but always the youngest, they like to have him or her like closer.
Yeah, agree. Totally agree. And in the UK, they were like, okay, where do we send him? And at that time, I was very young. So I did something called like a foundation year. And I started at 16, right? Doing the foundation year. So they were like, okay, we need to be careful where we go. And they looked at it. They said,
that's fair then,
you look at rankings of universities. So that's always where you start. And then you look at safe towns, right? So you obviously think London is very scary. Sending a 16-year-old is quite crazy. But then luckily, the sweet spot was Bath, safest town in the UK, was awarded then. And it was number 1 in accounting and finance. So they said, this is perfect. So came to Bath, like big change, big culture change, weather change as well, coming from Dubai. So, but it's great. So enjoyed the town. It's small. I was like not used to people shutting shop at around 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, because I never assumed retailers have a life. But anyways, I did my degree in accounting and finance and really enjoyed it. But then what I was like, okay, what I want to do, right, for my placement year, because you start thinking that in year 1 and year 2, and I wanted to work in banking, right? Because while I was doing accounting and finance, I enjoyed the finance side of things. And like if you look through my Facebook feed, you know, you when you get the notification that what he said 10 years ago.
Oh, yes, like the memories,
Exactly, that I was getting excited around Bitcoin.
Wow, okay.
And I was talking to like, oh yeah, it's $25, it's $100, it's $200. And I was like, why didn't I just buy it at that time? And then I wouldn't have this conversation.
You should have.
But I just like reporting it.
You wouldn't be here on this podcast.
Exactly. You're right. I'll probably be doing this in a yacht or something. But yeah, so I enjoyed that aspect, and I started looking at like banking roles, right? Investment banking roles, sales and trading, and got through certain stages, but didn't get through the final area. And then while I was in the process, one of my colleagues or one of my classmates said, "Why don't you look at IBM?" Right?
Interesting.
And then it got me thinking to say, okay, finance is a good option, but also technology.
Yeah.
Because whatever I'm talking about from a share perspective or any companies I follow, they're all tech companies. So why don't I do that? And I ended up applying for like a finance/operations role as a placement at IBM, which was really good. So got through all the stages, which was really good fun. And then I started my placement in Portsmouth, right? Which is where IBM UK is based. Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Really close to Isle of Wight. And I was working in the finance team, literally like you can think of any intern role, working on spreadsheets, putting presentations together, looking at month-end finance processes, etc. But what got me interested was working close to the sales team.
Nice.
So I actually started interacting with them. And a simple example I say is I used to look at their expenses, right? Taking customers out. And I like that aspect of it. So I was like, why am I sitting here reporting on their expenses and doing their claims? I want to be on the other side, actually spending the money rather than reporting and claiming it back. So what helped me in that role was to understand what the different roles are in the industry when you start just working.
The corporate environment.
Exactly. So corporate environment is the exact word you can say, because everyone does multiple roles, but there are options to move around. So I got close to the sales team and I was like, okay, why don't I use like my finance skills? Because I'm quick to understand what they talk about in price negotiations, value impact, but also take my other skills when it comes to communication, people skills, communication skills, and also like eagerness, right? You can sense that a person wants to make an impact, is not dull.
Yeah.
So I felt like, okay, let's try that. And I was fortunate to get hired back as a sales graduate role.
Nice.
So I did the sales graduate role for 2 years, which is good fun, and I'm sure we'll dive in detail. But yeah, and then because I got really excited in my 2 years, I then progressed into a sales role and become a full-time sales rep, where you get on a comp plan and you have targets. And luckily, it worked out well. So I did well for my, 2+4 at IBM, which is good, my 6 years post-graduation. And then obviously new companies are coming about in that time, especially SaaS companies like you mentioned, with niche value and capabilities. So that's where I was like exploring, and I said, okay, IBM's been great to me. I've learned a lot. I've developed a lot of skills, built a big network, but maybe it's worth exploring what's else out there. Exactly. And that what brought me on to Certinia, right? And we're going to talk about like obviously what Certinia brings special, but and then doing this role again, starting from scratch, right? I don't know the product, I don't know the territory, etc. So doing that has been a big challenge. It's a big learning curve, but I've also enjoyed that, right? So learning again new skills. How do you work with different teams? Because every company is different. Going from IBM, which is like 350,000 people, to a company like around 2,000, right? Okay. So it's been really good fun, and and so long I'm progressing, I'm learning new skills, and I'm also enjoying it. So that's why I feel like I can now finally say I actually have a sales career rather than I'm still deciding.
Interesting part of like where 6 years in, because a lot of people get just drawn into the company's culture and they stay for 10, 15 years, but then you made that shift, which I think contributed to your learning a lot, I'm assuming, and we'll talk a bit more about that. I think what would be useful before we go into like what did you do at IBM and Certinia, what does it mean when someone work in sales, especially for like tech companies? If you can touch a bit on that, what do you do?
Briefly. And basically, so before I describe what I do, simply put, right, what is sales? And obviously, sometimes sales has a negative connotation, right? Or you're trying to sell me something. You're going to steal something from me.
Trick me into buying that.
And exactly. And then it's like Hollywood also has a thing where they like dramatize it, like how they're trying to win over someone. Take what they say for Wall Street, takes the client's money and put it in my pocket kind of thing. And it's nothing like that, right? So simply put, you obviously have someone who's trying to sell something, but also someone's trying to buy something, right? So there are two sides of thing. And that's it, coming to the need. So very simply put, there is a need, there is a demand, and then you got to supply it, right?
Yeah.
And that's it. That's what salesperson does, right?
Yeah.
Salesperson basically fulfills that demand, right? And
that
helps
makes sense.
anyone.
Yeah.
So when you think about the buy side, there's either they know exactly what they want, and then you give it to them, okay, and you manage that relationship and that transaction, or they don't know what they want, and then you help them do it. So this is where a salesperson comes in, right? A salesperson comes in to say, okay, they wants to understand what challenges they're having, so you can help them deliver that. Or simply put, they don't even know what challenges they're having, but they want to achieve a certain outcome.
Yeah, they have a problem.
Yeah.
Okay, and then they approach you as a company known to be in that area or field where they're facing that problem in.
Exactly.
And
that's it. So it's basically a salesperson's job is to understand where they are, right? To understand either they know exactly what they want, so can we do that? Or what challenges do they have and how we can help them overcome them? Or simply put, what outcome, what is their desired outcome, what's their desired value, and how we can get there.
Backwards from...
Exactly.
Interesting.
So that's basically what sales is. Yeah.
Nice. You touched a bit on that there's the customer and they have a need, and then you start to either do the analysis or you identify the right product or a service for them and you offer that. Can you describe this customer journey a bit for us?
No, sure, definitely. So from a customer standpoint, right, like how we said, they either know what they want, or they have a challenge, a problem, or they just want a desired outcome.
Exactly.
So when we put it from a customer perspective, so it's awareness, right? So the first step is, are they aware of what they need, or aware of what problems they have, or what outcomes? And then when you think from a buyer's journey, is the next bit, which is intent. They actually say, okay, yes, we want to make a change, we want to do something, right? So that's the intent stage, right? So from a buyer's journey, you have awareness, intent, and then they start having discussions, right? And then they go into negotiations. And then the final stage is purchase or decision, right? And these are basically the buyer's journey.
Okay.
So sales obviously can help in any aspects of it.
Yeah.
And when I say sales, obviously it's a team effort. So you have different people involved in different stages. But that's how we describe a buyer's journey. And one of like a sales exec, any sales exec would usually manage the entire journey.
Okay.
Right?
That's like a bit of the more senior person.
Exactly.
It would be very useful now to break down that sales team.
Okay.
Who works in them? What are the different sales roles and the levels, and how are they linked to this journey you described, which is from awareness to purchase?
Perfect. Yeah. And I think that's a good example to say, how do you get into a sales role as well, right? Because I know people who knew exactly that they want to be into sales, and then they went through all the cycles, that is. So at the very beginning, which I recommend people starting, is doing a SDR role, sales development representative.
Yeah.
So what that role basically does is that takes in inbound. So customers, very simply put, who know exactly what they want, they will reach out to you directly. So whether that's be an inbound through a website, whether that be through another partner, another network, and they come in. So these SDRs basically say, yes, what you've asked for, we can help, or no. So they qualify, but it's more of inbound. So they're not out there doing the research.
They're doing the outreach and
Exactly. So first role is basically the SDR role. And then as you progress, you then say, okay, you want to do more of the outreach, which then moves on to BDR, business development representative. So here it's more of an outbounding role. You research companies who are the good fit for you, okay, and where you can help them. So you either research that they have these challenges or they have a desired outcome, and you work on how you can pitch to them, whether that be cold calling, emails, LinkedIn. When you go into events, you get a lot of presentation on events, right? So you present yourself to say, this is how we can help you, right? And they kind of build in what we would say account plan, put together. Who are the people you're going to target, the plan, and we're going to touch upon that as to what a person does day to day. But that's what their job is, right? And then next bit is, once you move on, you then pick on an account management role. So you have existing customers, right? But then once you get them, you want to land and expand. So they come in, they make the initial purchase.
Learn and expand?
Land the deal. So
and then expand.
Let's say someone comes in, buys the software, and then they want to grow and see that. So that's where the account management role comes in. So the customers made the purchase, but now they want to make sure that it's working as per desired outcome. Do they realize value? And then how do they grow?
Yeah.
Whether that be add-on, so additional sale,
Services,
additional licensing of the same product, or even cross-sell,
Yeah.
right? Additional capabilities you brought out and additional
Analytics
products. Exactly. So that's where the AM role would fit in. Okay. And then the next bit, which everyone knows as commonly as AEs or account execs. And that's a mixture of both. Right?
Between the account management and the BDR?
So it's basically a mixture of...
Oh, the land and expand part.
Yeah, so land and expand, but also new sale.
Okay.
So for example, there'll be certain sales which they'll land a customer and pass them to account managers. But sometimes they'll be like, okay, we want a small piece, but there's a lot more to expand. Right? So there's a lot more add-on or even cross-sale.
Yeah.
And that's where the AE gets involved. So they would do everything. They'll work with the SDRs when if one of the customers inbounds, work with BDRs, work with account managers. So they are the overarching people who we call the CEOs of their territory.
Yeah.
And that's where the AEs come in. And then obviously gradually as you progress, you become a senior AE. Then you start managing a sales team if you would like to.
Okay.
So you become like a sales director.
Director.
Sales director or sales manager, sales director. Every company calls them different. And then you become like an RVP, a regional vice president. And then you become an area vice president where you manage other managers.
Okay.
And then you become an SVP, a senior vice president.
Okay.
And then the ultimate goal is to be VP or president
of sales.
Yeah, exactly.
That makes sense. Wow, that's a long chain.
That's a long chain,
But it definitely does make sense. Like how it links to also the buyer side, which you described, like the three different scenarios. So that's a great way of linking the two. Can we start with like what Certinia does a bit? Sure. What does the company do?
Yeah.
And then we'll talk a bit about your responsibilities and
perfect.
Day-to-day more.
So just on a high level, right? We help services organizations, right? So as you can imagine, there's a big challenge in the market right now, right? Interest rates are all-time high. There's a lot of credit crunch, cost of living crisis, etc. So if you're thinking from a services standpoint, you want to maximize on the resources you have. When I talk about maximize utilization, you want to reduce waste, right? And you want to bill accurately and also improve your cash flow. So where Certinia comes in is we provide a solution which sits on the Salesforce platform, which manages the life cycle of a services engagement. So let's talk about some of the things they do, like from a life cycle. So you are a consultant, okay? When you're engaging, you want to make sure, you build an accurate statement of work. Do you estimate accurately, right? Because you don't want to make sure that you undercharge a customer, right? So you make sure that you estimate accurately. Then the next bit is, okay, how quickly, once the deal is closed, how quickly can you start delivery? So how quickly can you manage your resource and get them assigned to the project, right? So we help in resource management and skills management, right? The right skills, right time, right? And then we help them do the project management, right? Are the consultants on time? How quickly can they do the time and expense? How much are they within the scope of the project? Are they working towards a scope? Right? And the next bit is when you do the time and expense, how quickly can you bill the customer? And then more importantly, recognize the revenue. Because we all want to make sure that we're recognizing the revenue. And the last bit is obviously cash collection. Right? So the entire 6 elements of the life cycle, we help them. Right?
And that applies to your clients or any services company. They can basically come to Certinia and depending on the problem, but the services apply to any services company, right? Or do you focus on a certain industry or?
So any company who is very much services driven. So think about like consultancy firms, the big 4 accountancy, legal firms, but also big technology companies that have a services arm. Right? So at the end of the day, it's the same principle, the same challenges, and they not only want to sell their products, but they also want to sell their services to help their product sale, for example. So they still want to make sure that their services delivers so that they can grow their products. And it's all about doing that quickly and easily as well. So that's where we help. So those are like what you call our ideal customer profiles.
Okay. And within these services you offer, like where do you sit in as a sales person or as a senior account executive at Certinia? what is your role and how do you help that company either attract the customers or grow the accounts of existing one? If you can touch a bit on the definition of your role, basically.
Sure. So as an AE, right, you do the same. You manage the entire sales lifecycle, right? So for example, you select a few accounts that you think are the perfect candidate for your offering.
So you do like a research.
So for example, let's say we're at the very beginning, you get handed a territory, right? So you get handed over that you're going to look after this territory, whether it be high tech or business services.
When you say territory, is it like a set of the products you offer, or how?
So it's more from the account perspective.
Okay,
let's take it even simpler. You're a big organization, right? And you say, okay, I can have this much addressable market, right? Then you start dividing that up. You might say, okay, we have either small accounts, so you'll call them like growth accounts. Then you have mid-market, maybe size of company, and then you have enterprise accounts. So I'm an enterprise rep, so I sit in the enterprise space. And then within the enterprise space, you get like an industry. So financial services, business services, high tech, etc. So when you get that industry,
which is high tech for you,
for me, it's business services.
Business services,
correct? Yeah. So you get your territory, and then you start doing your territory plan. Okay. Where do you see your existing customers? So you build some research on existing customers, but you then start working on the wider net new customers, right? And you see, okay, how can I bring that list down to a handful of tier 1 accounts? And these tier 1 accounts are basically the ones which you think are a perfect fit for you, right? Because you can deliver them value. You see that they have certain challenges that you have helped other customers in the past, and you can help them. And then you start building out account plans for those handful of customers.
And that's before you reach out to them.
Before you reach out,
right? You need to be ready. You need to show them how we're going to offer you value, solve your problems, etc.
Exactly, because you wouldn't want to reach out to them, right? You don't want to just pitch your product. You want to deliver some value. You want to pitch a value.
You want to see the match, like
exactly.
This is where we are going to help you solve X, Y, Z problems.
And it's getting even harder and harder, right? Because right now, they want people to be informed. With the current world where everything's readily available, you can Google things. So they are like, you don't want someone just to pitch a product and not know what the customer is currently doing. So research is very key, right? And you build out these massive account plans to say, this is how a company generates revenue. This is what their costs. These are their current challenges. This is what their strategy is going forward, because they'll declare that, especially big companies or public companies want to tell shareholders what they're working on. So you see if you can map to those strategies, okay, and then you work out what does the C-suite look like, what's the stakeholder mapping, right? Do you currently know someone in the company? Do you know who has the purchasing power, right? And also who has the biggest pain, because your outreach will depend on that. So you do that for your tier 1s, and then you build an outreach plan, whether that be inviting them to events, getting your BDRs involved to do their outreach when it comes to cold calling, emails, bespoke LinkedIn messages. Video messaging works a lot, right? As well, sending them video messaging is great. It's a great tool, right? And then once you get going, when you get traction, you then start having meetings where you then what we call qualification. You're trying to understand if there's an opportunity for you in there. So once you qualify, then you move on to what we call discovery, where you get your pre-sales involved. So pre-sales or tech sales or solution engineering, they then start saying, okay, now that you've qualified, it's an opportunity for us. Let's get into discovery to see can we help them really. And they'll start talking about like, what does the solution look like?
The technical aspects a bit more.
Yeah, so they start talking about how is it going to fit overall? Is this going to work for us? Or is this like, we cannot do this because it's a mismatch. So once you do discovery, then you start working on solutioning. So then you start putting together what it will look like, right? And once you start doing the solution, you realize, okay, this fits. Then you start talking about, okay, is there what do you call a proposal phase? Can you propose something, right, which will meet the customer's needs, both from a product standpoint, but also financial standpoint, right?
And does that include like pricing, everything, or we're not there yet? The proposal part.
In the proposal part, it includes everything, right? So it obviously starts with what we understood from the challenges, what we understood on the value of Foreseek. This is what we recommend from a solution standpoint, and then this is what our pricing looks like. So a full-blown proposal, right? When you receive it, whether it be like a document, a presentation. And then they ask you to present as well. You come in person, because sometimes they do it to multiple people, right? They issue it out to multiple people, or they're speaking to multiple vendors. So you come in, you do your presentation, and that's which is really key, because it's all the work you're doing in the past,
you
right?
have to land that presentation.
Plus, and the presentation. So people always say presentation is key, but sometimes I find that it's only window shopping, right? Or window dressing, basically, what they call it. They already know what they made up their mind, but they want to see how good you hold up in the room. So that is very, very important to like make sure whatever you've been saying in during your engagement, you reiterate that in the presentation, right? And once you do that, then it comes to negotiation, because they're like, okay, we want you, but your price point is not right, or maybe the solution needs a bit of tweak, etc. So you move from proposal to negotiation, and then it's decision time, right? This is the best from our perspective and also from their perspective, right? And that's when it comes to you close won it or you close lose it.
Okay.
So those are the like stages, and that's what we do as AEs. We manage the entire sales life cycle.
Wow, it's because like for me at least, I'm not that knowledgeable of sales. So when you there's a lot to it before the purchase, because I also know there's a lot to it after the purchase when it comes to account management, as you said.
That's right.
And growing the account. So it's when you describe all these details that happened before, I've never like thought that you need to do that much work to really land a deal. But because you said you work in a higher tier of clients or customers, you really need to understand their operations, their strategy, their problems, and then just give them that, okay, this is where we match and this is what I'm able to offer you. So there's a lot to it, I think, and before the purchase that I wasn't aware of.
And this is obviously, we are managing the end-to-end, but sometimes the customer's done a lot of groundwork, which we're seeing that with new technology, the customer has already built up a lot of knowledge. So they exactly know what their challenges are, which is good. So we don't have to work with them to get those out. They know exactly what their desired outcome is. They also know sometimes what vendor they want, right? Because this is where technology, and we're going to come on key trends.
When you say vendor, you mean the person offering the service, like you, or
a vendor, or for example, a solution. And then they have a select few vendors. So for example, we don't have to do all that discovery prior, because they know exactly what they want, and we just have to qualify that.
But so you skip
exactly.
First two, or
like when you know a customer wants a certain product because they know that's the only product that can fit the challenge, then all they're doing is looking at other vendors who do that product. And that's where, going back to the roles, the SDR gets involved in, right? The customer knows that's what they do inbound. They call you rather than the other way around. So that's where they've already done that, and the SDR takes all that notes and then shares it with the AE to say, so they've done all the groundwork for us. Separately, the research bit, when it comes to enterprise, the BDR does all of that as well, right? And you work with the BDR, which is where I say it's always a team game when it comes to enterprise, right?
So from like before purchase, all these steps you described, it's not only you, right? So you sometimes work with the SDR, the BDRs, maybe the three of you working.
Exactly.
So it really depends on how this customer approached you. And then based on that, what the information you have, you manage,
and this is where you say you are the CEO. So you are responsible and you own it, but you take help from everyone else. So even when you think about outbound, there's a huge team, right? A marketing team, which get involved, which do like a lot of digital work. They do webinars, they do campaigns, hosting events, they sponsor events, they sponsor exhibitions, right? Where they talk about Certinia, for example. So a lot of work is done, but we own the life cycle and we're responsible, for the deal. So that's where an AE gets involved.
And you also mentioned that you're even involved beyond the purchase, no? Like the account growth. So that's a different part of your role, I'm assuming.
Definitely. And in fact, it doesn't even stop at purchase, right? Because at the end of the day, we have done all that discovery. I built a relationship with the customer. They rely on us now because we did the deal with them. We partnered with them. So then they'll get involved in, implementation. How do we implement it? Time to value. Are we seeing the realized value we sold them on, right? And also once we do that, what does growth look like? Continuous improvement, right? At the end of the day, I call it a marriage, right? A partnership with the customer.
Correct. So, and can you touch a bit more on that part? Like, what do you do? Like, okay, they've onboarded, they started using the tools slightly. How do you contribute further in that area?
So And there's another role involved, right? So there's a team called Customer Success Manager, a CSM, and they support on that. So basically, they get involved from day one. And in fact, many of the CSMs, they get involved pre-sales.
Okay.
As soon as we know the customer is going to make a purchase, but they're doing negotiations and it's sounding good, it's sounding positive, and the probability is high, they get involved, they start building relationship with customers, understanding the value, and then their job actually it's already started, right? When it goes to customer conversations, talking about implementation plan. Are we delivering to what was planned out, right? And the challenges, because again, there's only so much discovery you do, but when you actually do the implementation, exactly. So how does that work?
And
right?
they talk to internal teams, I'm assuming, like
exactly.
The CSM team.
Yeah, the CSM team talks with obviously us, what was planned out, what the implementation team, if that's in-house or even other partners, right? Because at the end of the day, there are many partners who do this. The customer might have a partner say, we want to work with them to do the implementation for said software, right? So we work with them, and then it talks about, okay, what does the adoption plan look like? Because you don't just start off full bang, 2,000 people log on to the system on day one, right? What does go live look like? Adoption plan. What value they're realizing?
Are you describing what you do now, or the CSM team?
So
or
it's
the
a team.
mix?
It's a team. Yeah. So for example, we are responsible because if we don't drive adoption, we can't drive future sales.
Yeah.
So we get involved, but we support the CSM.
Yeah.
Because the CSM wants to own it, but at the end of the day, we are responsible for it.
True.
Right? Because it's, like I said, our territory. So we work with them. But then when it gets further on, they'll talk about, okay, there's additional growth for additional sales. Or there's a new add-on, like a cross-sale.
Cross-sales.
Yeah. So a new solution which can add on to it. For example, the life cycle I talked to you about. You start with a few elements in the start, and then like, okay, we can now build statement of work on our platform. We want to now move to resource manager, project management, etc. Billing, revenue recognition, etc. So we can grow it organically. Right.
There's a lot that you do. So how can, like, if you can describe, I don't know if it's like a day in the life or a week in the life, like, are there cycles where this period you're doing the pre-purchase part, and then like how if you can just describe it more in a practical way, like the daily responsibilities, and you come into work, what do you do? Because there's a lot of different tasks and different cycles.
And the thing is, with sales, it's not like, oh yeah, you're billable, so every hour you do is going to be productive. Right? And that's the very hard bit, because you can probably spend 3 months working on a really big deal and it might not close, right? So, and that's where sales is tricky, right? So it's not for everyone, because there's a lot of risk. There's, again, you have all the things you get, anxiety, stress, but that's where we say work smarter, right? And over time, you learn certain things. You know when it's the right fit. Is it worth engaging? There'll be certain accounts where you'll be like, okay, these people are never going to buy anything from you. Or the opposite, these people are going through transformation and they are perfect customers for us, right? Because they want to work with us because they see the need. So it's all about, like, how do you prioritize?
That's a fair point. The more experienced you become, the more you're able to detect that match faster, basically.
There you go. That's it. And it could be like, everyone has a learning curve to start a new company as well. So it's not going to be just on your sales experience, but your experience within the company as well. That's true. Right? But from a day-to-day perspective, obviously you have your ongoing conversations, your ongoing meetings in different stages. So obviously you start prioritizing based on quarterly, right? So every company runs quarterly. Right? They won't care about quarterly sales. So within the quarter, you prioritize what you're going to close. So your
pure outcome is just trying to also generate revenue for Certinia, no? Like,
of course, like any sales role you do, you get a target. Right? And that's where
I wanted to ask you, do you have targets?
That's it. So,
because some people in sales say, no, my company doesn't have targets. Some say, so in your case, there is a target.
Like any sales role would have a target, right? Right. SDRs would say they need to get 6 leads. Inbound leads, the qualified leads. BDRs would say we need to get 6 outbound leads. We want to reach out and build pipeline at the end of the day. And all the company all functions on pipeline, right? How much pipeline you generated, how much you're able to close for pure revenue for the company, right? And what does the growth look like going forward? So you have to do both. But from a personal perspective, obviously, we say the salary received is just to cover the bills, but the actual money is the commission, right? So we want to make sure we achieve our targets, overachieve our targets, but you get multiplies as you overachieve, and then you can actually do a fancy holiday, right? That's the goal, or buy a car, etc.
Because remember at the beginning of the episode you said you want to be that person who expenses the
exactly there you go. So so
you
want to get the expensive
leverage
lunches.
That
exactly spot on.
Enough.
So I think you get your target and you start deciding, okay, where's the bulk going to come in? You start prioritizing what your quarterly looks like, right? What quick deals you can close to start get the momentum going. Because at the end of the day, again, simply put, I read this book recently, Atomic Habits, right? It talks about instant gratification and also long-term gratification. So if you have a bit of both, it's good because instant one keeps you going, but you want a goal to aim at as well. So it's about the quick deals, doing them instantly so you get your quick commission, but you also have deals which are going to give you the big commissions.
It's like a time/money equation. You can focus on one purely because you'll lose the other.
Exactly. Because you have something today, but you don't know what your future looks like. So you got to make both, which is why sometimes pipe gen is given more importance than revenue. Because sometimes they know the deal's going to happen. Why are you spending so much time doing it? It's going to happen. Revenue will come in.
Because there might be a very big one, but the risk is high. So if you focus a lot on these the easy, like the easy fruits, or I don't know.
Exactly. The easy fruits, the low-hanging fruits.
Low-hanging fruits. That's it. You lose those, and you end up losing both, which is
That's it. That
makes sense.
So it's all about like how do you prioritize? How do you do the role? Plus, different stages you have people to support you, right? Like we said, you got SDRs, BDRs. You got the CSM function as well. You got your tech sales who are there. So you might be on these calls, but you're actually just listen-only mode sometimes. Whereas sometimes you're presenting. So it's all about managing your energy. But also I say it's not the hours you do, it's what you do in the hours, right? So you got to work smarter.
True.
Because again, we're not billable. So we can be on site and not get a penny from a customer, right?
No, that's very insightful. If someone is interested in getting a sales job, can you describe the interview process, the different stages, and how to prepare for these different stages?
Sure, definitely. And what I'm going to give an example is the process I went through. Right?
That would be amazing.
So from a very simply put, right, you have certain standard questions which everyone asks for any role you do, right? What they call your situational based questions, because they're trying to get to know you as a person and get to know what kind of skills you have, right? Whether it be tell me a time you dealt with a conflict, right? Or tell me a time where you had to adapt, etc. So they want to see if you have those cross-functional skills. So and there's loads of information available out there, right? I remember going through those and following the simple STAR technique.
Method,
exactly. So everyone knows it's common knowledge. But again, which might be similar to other roles as well, because at the end of the day, sales is not just for doing the salesperson role, but also you always sell yourself in an interview process, right? So again, that's another
you prove
skill.
If you're a good salesman or not in the interview. That's the first part.
There you go. And in any role you pick up, right? If you're a software engineer, how do you sell yourself, right? You talk about your accolades, right? Your accreditation, the skills you have, where 100%. You've displayed this, your experience. It's similar with a salesperson, right? So if you're starting off, obviously you talk about what you do, what you do as a degree, what roles you've done, etc., and why you want to look at sales. But very simply put, the structure which I suggest a salesperson follow is why the company, right? So why do you want to work for them, right? Why sales? Why do you think that is a role for you? And then why you? Why should they hire you? Right? So it's very like any conversation you have, this is why you should do it, right? So it's always starting about like, okay, why is that company good for you, right? And why are you good for the company, right? Then moving on to why sales, based on your experience. So like if you're starting off new, is to say, okay, this is what I've been doing. I've always done a sales role, right? I talk to my neighbors, I talk to my colleagues, I've created a business, I've been doing well like this, I've been working on shares, etc., doing some trading, right? Getting people involved, creating a fund, right? And then obviously why you talk about your skills and also your ambition, right? This is where I see myself, okay? Now, one thing I recommend for everyone to be different is try to be unique in the sense of give an example and also say you've already started doing this, right? So for example, the role you're going to, let's say you're starting a new SaaS company,
Yeah.
right? Just say you've already started speaking to customers around it. You've built demand, you've built leads. You go into a new territory, you start planning your territory before and tell them, this is where I see my plan. These are what my 90 days look like.
Wow.
In the job, you say you've already got the job.
Right?
And that's what makes you stand out.
Nice.
Because people say, I will do this, I will do that. But everyone says that.
Yeah.
They want to see, okay, you've put in a lot of investment before you even got the job.
Yeah.
You've already done all of this before they even hired you. They're like, wow, imagine what it'll be like when they hire you.
Actually...
And that's where I feel like it'll help people.
Nice. Is there a technical kind of an aspect where they put you in a situation and they tell you, sell me that product, or they tell you, oh, at Certinia we have, or at IBM we have XYZ products? How do you think they fit into that type of industry or that type? Are there such questions, or it's purely behavioral for any level, like even AE, senior AE, SDR, BDR? Like
so the format will be the same, right? On like why the company, why sales, why you, and when I say why sales, why that role sales, right? Why SDR, why BDR, etc. Again, like in the interview, they might ask you, let's do a sales pitch, a mock pitch, right? They'll either give you some details earlier on, or they'll say,
okay,
for example, sell me this pen, right? But that rarely happens. Exactly, like sell me this pen, sell me this pencil. But it rarely happens these days, right?
Really? Okay.
From a very simple pen and pencil kind of thing.
But
they will say maybe, this is the research, this is the company, and this is what you're pitching. Let's do a mock pitch.
That makes sense.
And you do that even when you do a grad role. So I remember I got in and then I did sales school, where they teach you how to do it. And the way they teach you is they do mock sales pitches, mock sales interview kind of process. So if you have done the research and if you already started working on it, then you're very good at doing that pitch, even on the spot. Right? They might even ask you, the company you're working for, right, pitch it to me. Right? Again, sorry. The company you're applying for.
Oh, pitch me. Okay,
so how would you sell it to us?
Wow, okay.
Right? So I think that's, again, another way to stand out.
Yeah.
Because, again, if you've done all the research, if you've already invested a lot of time, you should be able to do that easily.
Yeah. Right? And if it's a tech company or a SaaS company, do they sometimes ask you questions about the tech they offer, or like their services, to really know if you are knowledgeable in that field? Let's say you're going into a salesperson in an AI company.
Okay.
Are there any technical questions to just see if this person really understands like the high level technical aspects before that they get the role, or not really?
So from a salesperson perspective, they're not expected to know technically what the software does, right? So for example, let's say ChatGPT, right? I wouldn't know what the product is from a developer standpoint, what the code is, does it work with other software, but I can say, this is how it can help you, the value it can deliver for you, right? So value and time to value, right?
That makes sense.
And like you said, usability is also a big differentiator. So it's all about how do we differentiate from other AI companies, for example.
And are there any resources you recommend, like in terms of how to prepare? Anything that someone can like review before they get into a sales interview, or just prepare the behaviorals and you're good to go?
So actually it ties in with something which, like you mentioned to me previously around key trends and things, right?
Yes.
So it's very difficult these days to differentiate yourself, because even the examples I'm giving, this is what I used, but maybe it's clocked on and everyone's doing that, right? Everyone might have a portfolio, everyone might have done a territory plan, what the 90 days look like. So I think it's harder to differentiate yourself in the process, and B, even companies are getting smarter, right? So let's say talk about AI these days. AI is big, but how can we make it work for us? So that's where you differentiate yourselves to say, okay, I've built all these things, right? But this is how I'm going to be using them during a role. So they're like that. You're bringing in new skills that they haven't thought about right now, because what I laid out was what typically it works, but bringing new innovative ideas.
A lot of research.
Exactly. So for example, what could be standing out is to say, oh yeah, I do breakfast briefings with existing customers. So I have that network and I can bring it in. But in terms of preparation, you can't really prepare on that. Or there's no like Bible.
But it's not like software roles where you have to.
Exactly. Again, they want to see something unique because they're tired of hearing the typical answers.
Yeah.
So you might do your research, right, which is good, but reading books, right, to bring in the creative side of you is very important. So for example, these days people talk about Challenger Sale as a book, right? It was released around 13 years ago.
Okay.
And it's all about like saying that buyer's journey. Buyers have become more and more smarter now. They already know exactly what they want. So how do you do that?
Yeah.
And also how do you challenge them on if they're correct or not?
Yeah.
Right? And being like very assertive to say, I don't agree with you, right? This is not how it's going to work, and play it out with them.
Yeah.
And that's something they like. They like how you assertive you are, how you can change a customer's mind. So it's all about reading books. I like reading non-fiction books around biographies, right? How do other smart people? So definitely recommend reading like Jobs, like Isaac Newton, Steve Jobs, doing Elon Musk's book is really good because they differentiated themselves in the market, and they're also salespeople, right? Why are we all having iPhone, Apple products? Because Steve sold it to us in the first place.
That's
right?
true.
So it's the same thing. It's the same concept, and how and you bring that energy into a process. That's all they want to hear.
No, that makes sense. There's a lot of technology emerging now, and you know, especially as a person, you've worked at IBM and now it's also a purely like SaaS company. So how do you see, like, what are the major trends shaping your offerings at Certinia or throughout the sales industry? And if you can touch a bit on AI specifically, like how is it contributing to the industry as well?
And like AI is a game changer, right?
Yeah.
So first of all, it's nothing new, right? Coming from the IBM world, we had Watson for AI for many, many years, right? I think when Jeopardy, like when Watson was on Jeopardy and beat the other winners, it was like, I don't know, 15, 20 years ago, right? So it's been there for a long time. But I think what's caught on this year is making it a consumer product.
Yeah. 100%.
And that's what's changed, right? So
I agree.
Making it consumer friendly, easy to access, right? And also bringing this generative aspect to it, right? Which everyone's clocked on. Yeah. So that's a massive trend in any organization. And when I go on to like various events and summits and talk shows, right? They all talk about how can we adopt AI? How can we embrace it? How do we build ethics around it? So bringing in change brings in opportunity, right? For everyone, right? And from my personal point of view, my customers, I say to them is like, you're embracing AI, but how do you measure data? Because you can only generate AI based on the data you have.
100%.
So this is where I help customers, and that's my kind of conversation to them. It's swapped around not only improving your business, but helping your future business and your future strategy, right? By making sure you can, monitor everything. You can access all the data easily, right? To help you when you implement AI. So that's my conversation. But separately, it's making it our lives harder and harder, right? Because it's improved the speed to knowledge. So for example, I know you could Google things, but that gives you different websites. But with generative AI, it tells you exactly what the views are. So say, for example, whatever I say, they can validate if that's correct. Right? What are my case studies? What are my customers? What are my value proposition? What's my customer satisfaction rating? And that is it.
Customers.
And that's where it's made it harder for us, right? But saying that though, so the more precise we have to be,
the higher the value.
The higher the value, but also separately, we're saving time because we use the same technology to the other aspects. So the amount of time it took us to gather that information, look at multiple things, we use AI to get that as well. So while we have to spend longer being more accurate, more precise, finalizing the value point and how we differ, separately, the information gathering, the information building has been automated. So it's about balancing that time and the time shift, which I find is obviously helpful in certain cases, but also a challenge.
Raises the bar a bit.
But
when you describe the pre-purchase tasks and how you, before you even reach out to them, I think that's key, where you like have to know who are their different stakeholders, what's their offerings, who's the main like the one with the most purchasing power, you said. So these things, like, I think you save quite a few time, and then you just really focus on communicating that perfect match to them, that becomes more of your focus rather than spending a lot of time on, okay, how do we build that case? So it definitely makes sense.
And it brings opportunity for other companies to do that, right? So many organizations also seek to outsource those things. Because now that AI is coming, people can... What I say is I'm really bad at using ChatGPT because my questions are very basic. And someone's saying there's an art to asking a question. And that's another thing. Like, how do you get the best information pre-engagement? Maybe you have other companies who do that quicker. Right? And that brings opportunity for them and makes it our lives easier. So we can focus on the bit we can control and we enjoy doing as well.
Right? I'll take a bit of a tangent, go back to the sales career. For people interested, and I think that's a very common question, what's the salary range across the different levels in the UK, given that you've been here and you know the market?
So I think like I'm my 8th year now, but I think if you follow the sales process I listed out or followed my journey, right? I think a typical starter grad sales role between 30 and 40k, right? And you do your grad scheme, right? And then obviously you move on a commission plan. So that way it works is that you don't just increase your salary, but you have a scope to make good incentive based on how you perform. So as you obviously you grow your salary, and I think in a typical over 5 years post graduation probably double your start. But the idea could range from after your 5 years. So let's say you have 7 to 8 years in the career, you're probably looking at making more than 100k based on base and commission.
Okay, that makes sense. And what could be the career like, maybe to reframe the question, can anyone get into sales? Of course, graduates, you can build the case, but for someone who is in consulting, let's say, or have been working in operations, do you see such career shifts where they come into sales, people who have like 5 years of experience? Do you see that? Or
definitely. So consulting for sure, because the same thing, right? They are literally selling their skills, right? When they're engaging in a project, they'll sell their skills to extend the projects or move on to other projects. They're building skills, improving their accreditation, their accolades, to work on higher level projects which are higher priced out. And that's the same in sales, right? At the end of the day, because you are a trusted advisor, right? You're not just pushing a product.
100%.
You, like we said, all that
knowledge. Because you do the research.
That's it.
Breakdown of the strategy. It's what the consultant does pre-offering like the final recommendation. So,
and isn't it even stronger to say, I've actually done this project. I've implemented this and I've delivered this value, and I want you to get the same benefit.
Makes sense,
So I always say delivery people make better sales people. Right?
But they need to have the people skills.
Agreed.
You don't want to bring that consultant who's a bit weird around people. It will be tough to sell even his own skills, even if he's good at it. So,
and this goes back to what is your personal driver?
100%.
Right? So when we pick careers, like I mentioned, like why did I pick sales? Based on my skills and the way I was driven towards it. When you do the same thing in delivery, right? Whether you want to be like an expert, you want to be the one actually delivering the value rather than just selling the value. But then afterwards you'll be like, okay, I've done this. I want to go to sales now, where I talk about delivering value, because I don't want to focus on the execution. Exactly.
That makes sense.
So that's your driver, right? So it's focusing on what is your driver, and then you can do it. But honestly, even if you look from a grad role perspective, there is no degree which gets you into sales.
True.
You get philosophers, like politics, finance, for example, right? Business administration, anything you name. I've got even engineers, like I got a network engineer who's a colleague of mine, right? And I was like, how do you go from network engineering to sales? And it's the same thing, right?
100%. And for you now, you've been 6 years into sales. What are you looking for in that career? Like, what's your next goal?
So like how we put it dumbly, it's about like, okay, what does your 5 to 10 year plan look like, right? So for me personally, I feel like I'm still building my expertise, right? So my goal is to continue as a senior account exec, become a trusted advisor with my customers, right? Where they're like, okay, Shresh knows what he's talking about. He's delivered multiple projects, right? Delivered value, has a network, right? And we can learn from him. So I want that aspect. And then obviously down the line, I would like to share that expertise and take a leadership role, whether that be managing a small team within account execs or the other parts, right? Because you always have managers who look after SDRs, BDRs, right?
So you can focus on one aspect of that journey and
hone on their skills, right?
More and more senior in it.
Exactly. And then as you progress from a sales manager role, you then want to manage a revenue stream. So like you have multiple teams, but you're responsible for the revenue of that and growing that pipeline. And then as senior you then start getting into reporting, but it's all about like helping people, right? Because you're a people manager. So I say that's the beyond 5-year goal, because right now I'm building it out, but again, that's an art in itself, right? That's a different challenge where you're not selling it to the customers, but you're selling it to your team, right? Because you have to get involved in recruitment activities, etc.
You have to also motivate the people themselves to like have that, energy to keep on going and build these deals and the pipelines. My final question is, you're an international professional in the UK, and a lot of my audience is also international students and professionals who are interested in coming to the UK, and I'm assuming sales is a very competitive industry when it comes to applying. What advice do you have for these people who want to break into sales in London or in any other cosmopolitan cities for these international people?
And see, I really feel, right, because sales is not a highly skilled occupation, so it's really hard to get sponsorship, right? Because at the end of the day, like, anyone can be a salesperson, but that's also a concern, right? Because anyone can do it, right? So it is definitely hard if you're an international student, right? So getting in to big companies would be my advice, right? Like getting into big companies if you're starting on as an undergrad or like a graduate, right? Because then they can afford to sponsor you, right? And the next bit is obviously bring something unique. If you're looking for a smaller company, but you should bring in a certain amount of clientele, a certain amount of revenue. So if you're higher up, like say for example you're changing occupations, you should be able to do that, because the company has to put a lot of money up front for you.
Correct.
So they're taking a bigger risk.
You have
to make it affordable. That's it.
That makes sense.
So that would be my advice.
No, that's a fair point. Like if you're experienced, you have to bring something, and as a graduate going into bigger companies definitely makes sense. Shresh, I really thank you for your time. I really appreciate it. Very insightful, and don't forget to watch us in the next episode. Thank you for watching.